Today we're going to look at some extra graphing practice with our trig functions, just in case we're still having some questions in some different areas. Again, our main focus is going to be on the sine and cosine graphs because that's where the basis for most of what we've learned has been so far. So we're going to chat a little bit about how our amplitudes and periods and our vertical and phase shifts kind of affect things and how we can tackle that and make it a little bit easier. So okay, graph the following functions, one period in the positive x and one positive period in the negative x direction. In other words, we're going to do one period heading to the right like we normally do, but then we're also going to mirror that or keep going to the left. I guess I shouldn't say mirror because they won't look identical every single time. So when we jump into one like this, again, typically, depending on which side my values are on, if we have that plus or minus part in, again, that's going to be my vertical shift. So here, I'm going to have a vertical shift of up 1, and my apologies for not having a line in there for that. Okay? But my amplitude, remember, is going to be my value directly in front of my trig function. Not time to go. Hee don't you wish. Is going to be 1. My period is always 2 pi over b. But my b value in this case is the value right in front of my x. So it's a half, and 2 pi divided by a half would give me a period of 4 pi. So if we were just looking for our normal one period like we do so often, I'd look over here and I always remember, oh yeah, it's going to be 0 and 1, 2, 3, 4 more points, with my period being that ending point. And since we're going to graph a period in each direction, 1, 2, 3, I'm going to go ahead and label both of those. And now I've just got to figure out what those values in the middle are. So when I'm graphing, I have some reference point. And again, we've always said, if you find the midpoint between 0 and the end of your period, and this one's really easy, because in between 0 and 2 is 1, in between 2 and 4 would be 3, and I'll have the same ones as I go onto the negative side of my x-axis. Okay, once I get that set though, we talked before there's a couple of ways you can do it. It depends on your comfort level. This one, my amplitude is 1, nothing really changed. And my only other real thing I got to pay attention to is this vertical shift of up 1. Now, I'm going to go ahead, I'm just going to label these. If you want, and we've talked about this, if you just wanted to take some light dots, oops, and this is cosine, definitely not starting there. And I'd say normally my cosine would go maximum, 0, minimum, 0, max. And again, I would keep that same pattern up as I was going the other direction as well. So max, 0, min, 0, max. Now again, that would just be this. Okay, my cosine with a period of 4 pi. But I have this vertical shift of up 1. So I would just go to each of these points if I went about it that way, and I'd go up 1. And again, if you're comfortable enough doing it without that, that's fine. Again, when we're graphing our sine and cosine curves, again, they're curvy, not just v's, not absolute value functions. And that's what this would look like. And again, I'm not as worried about labeling all of the ordered pairs. I mean, it wouldn't be hard here. If I did, okay, if I did, I'd have like 0, 2, and here this is my x value, so x, y, 2 pi 0, because I didn't go up or down at all. 3 pi 1, oops, probably should have put it by the point, right? And 4 pi 2 if you were actually going to go through and label. And that becomes a little bit more important when we're getting into some of these other funky ones, because again, I want to make sure that you're actually paying attention to these and not just putting random dots in places, trying to make it look good. That'd be no good. Okay, so I get to number 2. Again, I have no value in front of my sine. My amplitude would be 1. My period, since my b value is 4, would be 2 pi over 4, or otherwise known as pi over 2. And again, Harty, bonehead. You have a vertical shift. We're going to go down 1. And again, just keep paying no attention to the bells is what I get for trying to make this stuff during prep periods. So, with my amplitude being 1, I'll just label these by 1s again. With my period being pi over 2, now we'll go ahead and we'll break it down here some. So again, in between 0 and a half would be a quarter. And in between 0 and a quarter is an eighth. Now, if that's not something that comes to you right away, it's just something to keep in mind. When you're looking for half of something, when you're dividing by 2, it's the same as multiplying by a half. So if you multiply something like this by a half, it's really just that bottom number that you're multiplying. Okay? So 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. And if I needed to keep cutting it, 8 times 2 would be 16 in the middle, and so forth. And then to get my last blank, 1/8. 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, and I could keep going and going and going. And sometime I may need to. And I'll get those labeled on both the positive and negative of my x-axis sides. And again, we're in the same situation we were on number 1. If you're comfortable making the shifts right away, you can. But otherwise, you can say, okay, a sine curve starts at 0, and I'd go, up, down, down, up. So 0 max, 0 min, 0. And this one, now I don't go back up, because again, think about the curve. This one's going to keep coming downward, up, and back. But again, that would just be this part. That's not what I'm graphing. I'm graphing with it with a shift of down 1. So I'd take each of those, shift them each down 1. In this place, having a colored writing utensil comes in handy. And I get my curve. Okay. So again, using the base points, not using the base points, totally up to you. All right, this time we get to change a couple of things. I do have an amplitude value this time. Hey, look, I remembered to write the vertical shift part here. But I didn't have a value right in front of my x, so my period's just going to remain good old regular 2 pi. So I can go ahead and get those labeled. Again, 1/2, 2/2. That's where my 3/2 is coming from. I didn't just pull it out of thin air. Now, here I notice a couple of things. I notice my amplitude's going to be 4, so normally I'd be thinking, oh, I'll just put 4 up there. But then I also have a vertical shift of up 1. So here's how I would handle it, and no, I can't write 4 and -4, then put 5 and -5. We need consistency here. So since I'm counting by 4s, I'm just going to do it this way. May have to do a little more thinking here in a minute, but that's okay. And again, typically here with a sine graph, 0 max, 0 min, 0, and just keep following the pattern through. Then again, I'm shifting up 1. Now up 1 in this case doesn't mean up 1 line, because that'd be 8. So again, you're just going up a little bit. So my max is a little bit higher. My min is as well, and I get my graph in. So again, nothing too huge yet. We're going to start getting into doing multiple things though, and that's when we might have to think a little more, maybe even think about using a chart. We'll see. Okay, to the back. Ooh, this time we got lots of stuff to play with. Okay, I have an amplitude value this time, so we get that set. Okay, my 1/4 is my b. So 2 pi divided by 1/4 is 8 pi. So this is going to be kind of long. And then x scale, I kind of messed up my values here again. Phase shift. And it go the opposite of what you would think. So we're going to go left pi. Okay, let's take a breath. Amplitude of 2, and I'm shifting left and right. So I'm just going to use these as 2 and -2 because I don't have an up-down shift this time. It's a phase shift. My period is 8 pi. So I'll get that situated here. Let's see, 4 pi. Half of 4 is 2. And between 4 and 8 is 6. Okay. Now here's where the interesting part comes. Again, if I make my base real quick, and I say, okay, so cosine usually starts at the max, 0, min, 0, max. Just make my little dots pattern here quick. But then when I go to make my phase shift, I'm going left 1 pi, not 2 pi, like all these are. So either you go in between, or here's what I might even suggest. I might even seriously consider actually putting those extra values in just so I don't do something screwy. Now you don't have to. If you're like, dude, I can go half a line. It's not that hard. That's fine. I just know me. I tend to mess these things up when I don't do that. So if I get those in each of these again, so 8 goes to 9, 6 goes to 7, 4 goes to 5, 2 goes to 3, 0 goes to 1, 2 to 1, 4 to 3, 6 to 5, 8 to 7. And we're off and rolling. Okay, so again, really not that bad. Just take your time and do it in pieces. All right, let's see what else we got here. Okay, do not have an amplitude here this time, so that'll just be 1, so that's kind of nice. We'll get that part in. My period, my b value is pi, so my period is 2 pi over pi, which is just 2. I have a phase shift of right 3 and a vertical shift of up 1. Middle of everything this time. So, all right, let's see here. Period of 2. So this would be 1 1/2 and 3/2. And I notice I have a phase shift of right 3. Oh, buddy. Okay. So let's see here. Let's keep going. I'm going to have to extend this a bit here. That'll end up doing me okay. And I'm going to make that same extension a little bit further off here. To the left as well. I don't know if I'm going to have to go quite as far. And I'll just go to here and see if that gets me. Like, dude, not fitting on the screen anymore. Okay. So what happens when we have our periods kind of get stretched here a little bit. Okay, so normally, again, if I wasn't dealing with all the fancy stuff, and I was looking at a sine function, it'd just be like 0 max, 0 min, 0, and then I roll that right through to the other one as well. But I look, and I go, okay, so what have I got to deal with? Up 1 and right 3. I've got two different things that I'm dealing with. Okay, so up 1 and right 3. Be careful, each of your lines are only a half here. So I'm going from 2 over to 5. Okay. Up 1 over 1, 2, 3. Here. Up 1 over 1, 2, 3. This one, got to keep track of this myself. Up 1 over 1, 2, 3, which basically ended up being, what, 6 lines? 1, 2, 3. Yep. Up 1 over 1, 2, 3. That's why it pays to label all of these, because then you can kind of see, well, I'm at 0. I should end up at 3 when I'm done. Okay, I did. Up 1 over 1, 2, 3. 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 And I graph that through. And again, if I wanted to extend this, I could. I would just have to keep, I noticed the pattern. It's like, oh yeah, up, down. And I could go, and I could go, and I could keep going and going and going and go. Whoops, except I wouldn't go down further. I'd have hit my min already. Oh, Harty. I'd have been going back up here. You don't see this, okay? And kind of just keep following that pattern. Okay. One last one, and then hopefully you'll be feeling comfortable with this, but we'll be spending some more in-class time chatting about this as well. Okay, amplitude is 2, but a reminder, my a value is -2. What's that mean? Well, normally a sine function starts at 0 and opens up. It means this one, since it has a negative a, is going to open down. Basically, it's going to do a mirror image of itself. My period, my b value is 2. 2 pi over 2, or pi. I have a vertical shift of down 1, and I don't have a phase shift this time, so don't worry about your scale because you're going to see it on the actual graph here. All right, so what do we know? We know we've got amplitude of 2, so we'll get that labeled in. We know our period is pi. So cut it in half. Half of a half is a fourth. 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. And I get there and I go, okay, now the only thing I got to remember, it's a sine, it still starts at 0, okay? And again, if you want to jump ahead and do the shift 2, you go for it. But remember, my a value is negative, so instead of going up on the first one, I go down, up, here, back down, and here I'm heading up, and I still end up at 0 at the end. So that would just be this part. But again, I still got a vertical shift of down 1. So again, down 1, not down 2. So just go in between the two values. And I'm set. Hopefully after taking a look at these, if you've been having some troubles with your shifts or just doing some of your base functions, you're feeling a little bit better. But again, having a basic feel for your base graphs, is kind of key as we're moving forward with this to make sure that you've got this down. If you have the basics down of where everything starts and finishes, building from that's usually not too tough of a thing to do. But as always, if you got any questions, see me so we can get you all set.